Hello and welcome to Rock Duck Radio. You're listening to musicians, politicians, magicians. And today we'd like to talk about Matchbox 20, headed up by Rob Thomas. And I've got a personal story about back in the day when I was working with the band and when they got signed and how they came up as an unknown band from Orlando, Florida called Tabitha's Secret. And that band was formed in 1990 by the vocalist Rob Thomas and John Leslie Goff, guitarist Jay Stanley, and Brian Yale on bass. Chris Smith playing drums, but Paul Doucette later joined the band, and Chris Smith just dropped out a year later. So that ended up being the three-piece that we all know so well of Rob Thomas, Brian Yale, and Paul Doucette that went on to form Matchbox 20. So let's get back into the life of Tabitha's Secret. And they had some local hits that they were popular with, like Dear Joan, And Around, Unkind, Forever December, Paint Me Blue, and of course the big one, 3 a.m., which became their big hit with Matchbox 20. Now in 1995, that's when the band interviewed a couple different managers, and they ended up siding with the manager that was managing a local band at the time called Spider Monkey. Now, all of these bands were represented at the Southeastern Music Conference, which is an event I was running. We were running 6 clubs in Ybor City, and I happened to be running the club at Fat Tuesdays. And one of the bands to present themselves that night was, lo and behold, Tabitha's Secret. And of course, you know, as anyone knows who's in the industry, bands come and go. You see them all the time. It's a small circle of people, and you don't think much of it. And so to me, it was just another unknown band getting up on stage that was trying to, you know, impress the figures that were there from the labels, because this was a label event. Like I said, it was the Southeastern Music Conference. We were doing 6 clubs, and it was all to represent local talent from Florida. And there it was, Tabitha's Secret on stage doing their famous hit, 3 a.m. And guess what? The kick drum falls over on the side. Whoever had set it up did not tighten up the little bolts there that hold the legs, that hold the kick drum in place. The kick drum is falling over. So they're in the middle of their set. These were short sets because we were doing a lot of bands per night because we were trying to showcase all the talent. And this kick drum is falling over. So I run up on stage. I hold the kick drum in place the entire set. I'm sitting there basically, you know, kneeling down next to this kick drum, this band Tabitha's Secret, and is playing, wailing to their heart's content, and this kick drum is right in my ear, ba-boom, boom, ba-boom, boom, ba-boom, and I'm going, you know, it's like, but you got to do what you got to do. And all I could remember is just looking over at the singer, and I didn't know his name at the time, but obviously it's Rob Thomas, and he's barefoot, and I'm sitting there going, this guy's so comfortable on stage, he's barefoot, he's singing his arse off, and I'm up here holding a kick drum in place. I hope this is worth it. Well, guess what? It was, because that event introduced them to their soon-to-be manager and got them to where they needed to get. After their set, the band members came up and thanked me profusely, and Rob Thomas actually handed me one of their demo cassette tapes of Tabitha's Secret. And I'll never forget that night. It meant so much to me, not just helping that band, but there was many other bands that night. And the whole experience with the Southeastern Music Conference, working with Gary Muchmore of Sabotage fame. And it was just a very exciting time for me back then. But I used to play the heck out of that cassette tape. I used to play it in my car. I used to play it at the house. I wore the dumb thing out. And eventually I moved up to Tallahassee, and lo and behold, I ran into another up-and-coming band whose singer also liked to sing on stage barefoot, and that singer's name was none other than Scott Stapp of, yep, you know it, Creed. And they were doing their now infamous song, My Own Prison. And this was before they were signed. And they were playing at a local club called Potbelly's, which showcased local entertainment. Tallahassee is a college town, and this was right near the Seminole campus. And the funny thing is Kevin O'Malley, the manager, like I said, of Spider Monkey, and the one that was going to represent Rob Thomas and what became Matchbox 20, set up a showcase at Potbelly's in Tallahassee, Florida, with the representatives from Atlantic Records, A&R reps, Jason Flom, and then president of Atlantic's Lava sub-label. And this was sold on the band's material, which included the future hit 3 a.m. And so there's the connections. And that's how it all happened. And a year later, Atlantic Records and Matt Serletic ended up signing everyone, and the rest, as they say, is history. And it was interesting because it all started where I was at down in Tampa Bay, Ybor City, and then culminated where I ended up in Tallahassee, and then at the same place, Potbelly's, where eventually the A&R representatives from Atlantic Records would ultimately see and hear Rob Thomas and sign them, is also where we get Scott Stapp and Creed and the upcoming origins of that band. And we can get into that one in another episode, but we'll continue on with what we're talking about here with Tabitha's Secret. They were introduced through Matt Serletic to Atlantic Records, and they approached Tabitha's Secret concerning a long-term record deal with his production company, Melisma, but Jay Stanley nor John Goff were interested in it, and they thought it would be better to sign an album deal directly with Atlantic Records as opposed to going through Matt Serletic's private company. But Rob Thomas thought otherwise, and Rob Thomas decided to go ahead and take up Serletic's deal. And shortly after, Thomas, Yale, and Doucette signed a 7-record deal with Atlantic Records, and Atlantic Records introduced the trio to 2 guitarists, the ones that we know for, Matchbox 20, Adam Gaynor, which Serletic knew Adam from his time at Criterion Studios in South Florida when they were working with Collective Soul. And then also Kyle Cook, the other well-known guitarist. And Serletic grew up 2 houses down from Cook in Stone Mountain, Georgia. So with Cook on lead guitar and Gaynor on rhythm guitar, the 5 members formed the band Matchbox 20. And the rest, as they say, is history. Unfortunately, in 1997, the guitarist Jay Stanley and John Goff filed a lawsuit against Thomas, Yale, and Doucette and Serletic because the initial contract was offered to the entire band, and the lawsuit alleged that when it approached the band about a long-term agreement, the production of the self-titled, self-published EP, which included the track 3 a.m., and then agreed to represent the band to Atlantic Records. However, when Stanley and Goff had reservations, Thomas unilaterally fired the band's manager and agent, canceled their tour, and announced the band was breaking up. So Thomas on his own went behind the other 2 members, signed the contract, took those songs that they had written, although, really Rob Thomas is the creator and real true writer of those songs. So those went on into the lawsuit against their former band members and tortious interference against Serletic and his attorney. The lawsuit lasted 3 years and was settled out of court in 2000. and that's all in sealed records. Matchbox 20 went on to have huge hits and Grammys and everything else, and they're getting a little resurgence now with the new Barbie movie, Ken or something like that, from what I'm hearing. But I don't think of them as Matchbox 20. I remember Tabitha's Secret. That's the band I remember that was playing around, along with, like I said, Spider Monkey, Sabotage, Erasmo, Bleeding Heart, Stranger Band, and all the other great local bands from back in the day. Well, guys, I've got some upcoming music stories regarding Journey. And if you guys are a Journey fan, I have a personal story regarding a dispute between me and the band members of Journey and the album that could have been but never was. So we'll talk about that in an upcoming episode. Make sure you like this one, and if you don't mind, subscribe, because you never know what I might come up with next. All right, guys, gotta go. Rock Duck over out.
Older. Can you hear me? Older. Wait, no.